hard stuff. Hi again. How's everyone doing this morning? So what I want to talk to you about, and I'm actually really excited because I was paying attention, believe it or not, and listening to your commercials today, and you guys are doing really good with your commercials. And I know that sounds like, okay, yeah, and we don't normally, but I have to tell you how many times people do their commercial and other people walk away and have no idea what you do still after your commercial. So even though that sounds simple and it's something that, we feel like we all probably have down, I really wanted to make sure that you understand the anatomy of a commercial, kind of what the parts and pieces of a commercial are, how to get the best commercial out there, because this is what people are going to use to give you a referral. Granted, they'll do one-on-ones with you, and you'll have your 10-minute presentation, and you'll have all these other avenues, but usually, before you get to those places, to get everybody to listen to you at one time is when you do your commercial. So that's the time that you need. Now, every week you're doing this. So either a couple of things happen. Either people tone you out, they pay attention to you, they pay attention but don't understand what you're saying, or they get it, and we want them to get it. So what does that mean? One of the first things we teach you in MSP is to find out what your LCD is, your lowest common denominator. What is it that you actually do? Now, we talked about this if you've gone to MSP with me, but think about it. We do a variety of things, and you could probably list anywhere from 4 to 10 different actual services or products that you provide. For us, it's a no-brainer. It just flows off our tongue because we do it, so we totally get it. And why wouldn't you know I did that? Because isn't it obvious I do that? But you have to remember, what we do, other people don't, for a reason. And we're good at what we do, for a reason. So instead of assuming that they know exactly what we do, even though it may be an industry that should be common to everyone, or an industry that you think everyone knows about, just assume they don't. They've never heard of you before, they don't know what your industry is, they know nothing about you. I'm not saying treat them like they're dumb, and I'm not saying talk down to them, but I'm just saying assume they don't know the words of your industry. Assume they don't know the jargon, okay? Because a lot of times, we don't. We might nod and say, oh yeah, that sounds great, but we have no clue what you really need or what you're trying to get out. Or maybe the word you use and the word we use are two different things. I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me their internet was down, and it really wasn't, it was just they couldn't get email, but they used the different words. So if I go by what people say, like the actual words they use, I would troubleshoot on a totally different path because I'm understanding it in a completely different way, okay? So this is why it's very important. We assume when somebody says, hey, I sell houses. Well, that's great. We all kind of understand what a realtor does, but what makes her different? What makes her special? And why should we give our business to her? So it's her job to educate us. Why she sells houses, what kind of houses she sells, what type of people she's looking for, why we want her to be that person. That's her job to educate us on that, okay? Just like with HR. Now, we all think we understand HR, but at the same time, there's a lot of things in HR that we don't know, and that's why we get in trouble, because we don't know. But that's why we have you. So when you come up and you say certain things, we may understand some of it, but some of it we have no clue. And some of it's really important. And in the HR world, if you were to say it to anybody, they'd be like, yeah, I can't believe they wouldn't have that. But most of us don't know what that is and why we would need it. Like insurance. I mean, everybody talks about car insurance, rental insurance, but there's so many types of insurance. So again, it's that person's job to explain their business to you. Well, depending on your chapter, you have 30, 45, or 60 seconds. That's not a lot of time to explain your business to somebody. So that's why we have you break it up. Pick the 3 to 5 topics that you really want to focus on. You may do 10, and that's okay. But you can talk about those in your one-to-one or your 10-minute presentation. Because the last thing you want to do is confuse people. You might say something, well, I thought she did this, or I thought he did that, but now he's talking about this. So you don't want to confuse them. So pick your 3 to 5 topics that you know for a fact that you want people to really understand. Maybe it might be your main topics, or maybe they might just be topics people can relate to. Because sometimes you have to pick and choose between that. Sometimes you might have something that is so important and you really want to get it out there, but it's so hard to explain. And every week you try to do a 45-second commercial and you just see that confused look because nobody's getting it. So instead of confusing them and have them not talk to you at all, talk about the things that you know they can understand and relate to. You know, I can sit here and talk about networking and the back end and routers and security and all this stuff. Some of you might get it, but most of you will probably tone me out. But if I talk about why it's important to back up your data, because you could lose everything you have, all your accounting files, all your pictures, all that stuff, well, that's something you can understand. That's something you can relate to. And maybe that's not my top selling service or product, but at the same time, it's going to get you talking to me. And you're going to be thinking about me when I'm not around. So you have to kind of think about it that way too. Not just a service that you know you do, but maybe it's a service you think people will understand. Because the goal with your commercial is to have people think about you when you're not around. Now, it's not always easy to bring somebody up in a conversation just out of nowhere. You know, you're talking about, oh, it's a great day to go to the beach. Do you need flowers? You're not just going to blurt out something. Obviously, you want to kind of keep it in realm of the conversation that you're having. But if you know that Terry does lays, and you know she does tropical flowers, and you know she can send them to the mainland and stuff like that, and you're talking to someone who's going on a trip, you may say, hey, you know, it would be cool to bring a little bit of Hawaii with you. I know someone that could do that, you know, and just little things like that, that maybe you wouldn't normally talk about, but if you have a conversation, you have a lead-in to get in there. So what we want to do is we want to give you lead-ins. We want you to be able to have that casual lead-in where it's something you feel comfortable talking about, something that's natural to you, but at the same time, because it's so natural and comfortable, people want to know more about it. Instead of saying, well, you know, there's this type of flower that, you know, and you start trying to, well, I don't really understand. It looks, and then all of a sudden you're confused, they're confused, and nobody knows what you're talking about. You just totally lost that person, you know? So that's why it's really hard to do a commercial sometimes, because there's so many things you have to think about. And that's why you should be prepared with your commercials. A lot of us do commercials on the fly, because we're like, oh, I know my topic, I can talk about anything. But when you actually write it down and think about what you're saying and actually think of examples and think of stories and stuff like that, you'll find the more prepared you are, the easier it flows out of your mouth, the more people here will understand what you're saying and what you're trying to get across, and the more they'll be able to flow it out of their mouth, okay? Stories are amazing. I love that Debbie's been telling stories, because that's something people can relate to. When they hear a story about how somebody can use her service, or how somebody was so happy they had their service, or how unhappy they were when they didn't have her service, or how, you know, those little types of stories, you can relate to that. You can trust that I can see how that could happen. And so now that story sticks in your head. So the next time you talk to somebody and a similar situation happens, you say, oh my God, you won't believe what happened. I have a friend, and you could retell that story. And stories are wonderful because, again, everybody gets it. It's like telling a good joke. You know, everybody gets it, and they want to relay it, and they want to hear it because they want to tell it, you know? So if you can think of a good story or a great customer, you know, testimonial or an example of something that people can say, wow, I like that, you know, or I feel that way, or I want to feel that way, then again, people will remember it. You know, so key words, stories, you know, being simple and not too complicated. Because the more complicated we get, again, it's really hard for people to retell it or to think about us, so they tone us out. And you have to remember, there's 16 people here. So you're trying to remember everybody's information. And some of you are amazing. You can remember every little detail about people. Some of us can only focus on one. Some of us can focus on 5, you know. And so what I try to do is I try to make sure I do a one-to-one with everybody in my chapter, so that at least I can get a little more information. Then once a week, I pick 1 to 2 people I want to focus on. Because I may have referrals for other people, but if I know I'm going to focus on 1 or 2 people, those are the people I do the one-to-ones with. Those are the people I actively try to find them a referral. I'm really thinking about them and putting them in the front of my mind. And when I do that, a couple of things happen. I either find them a referral, or if I refer for somebody else because something comes up, or I get to know that person better, then I'm more comfortable when it's time to give them a referral. I'm able to relay their information and talk about them. So your commercial, not to put pressure on you, is very important. But what's great about it is it's your prelude. It leads you up to your 10 minutes, okay? Because your commercial is like a teaser. It's a little appetizer, a little poo-poo. Everybody gets a little piece every time you come. And then you get to do your 10 minutes, and that's where you get to talk about your business. And the one thing I will caution you on is try not to get too technical in your 10 minutes. Nobody wants to know how it works. They just want it to work. Okay, well, there's a few of us that want to know how. But usually, most people don't want to know how. They just want it to work. So if you stand up here, we had bless his heart, he was the greatest guy. He was our AC guy, and my 10 minutes is up. But every time he would do his 10 minutes, he would tell you all about air conditioning, and the insides, and the parts, and this, that, and everybody's like, because that doesn't help us get him business. Because when are we going to talk to somebody about the insides of an air conditioner? And that's the hard thing, is that sometimes people get so excited they want to show their credibility and how good they are, so they kind of get into like more of the paper side and the technical side, because they're really excited about, hey, I want you to know I know my stuff. You know, let me tell you how I know my stuff. But you know what? We know you know your stuff. That's why you're here. And when we do a one-to-one, you can tell us about that. But when you're trying to educate an audience, we, again, need to know how to refer you. So this is where you can tell us things to do. And real quick, since I'm at my 10 minutes, a couple of things you can do with your 10 minute, of course, is you can stand up, you can do a presentation. Some people do interactive. I went to a chapter once, and this insurance guy, it was awesome. He listed out 10 questions and said, okay, if you have a fire in your kitchen, and then it goes over to the next apartment, is that apartment covered, or is this covered? So you ask like very specific questions of scenarios. And then he came back and gave yes, no answers, and it would be covered if you had this or that, not that. But he really made you think, and it was interactive, and it got you like into it. So just different ideas and things you can do in your 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be you standing here talking. You can work with the audience. And I had one other person who was a realtor who did a skit where she picked 4 people. One person was selling the house, and 3 people were buying, and she had them each read a little paragraph, and then she asked us who we thought would buy the house, and then she explained why she chose the person she did. And again, it was listening to the details of what that person said. So again, it's just different things to get people involved in thinking, because you know what? People remember that. And when they remember that, they'll get you